Hello, everyone. My name is Chesley. I'm one of the senior participation officers here at the NSPCC. I've been working with a group of young people we just realised the last 6 months, working around our work with the Child Protection Sport Unit. Um, the young people have worked together to plan and organise today's online recording in support of our Keeping Your Child Safe in Sport campaign, which is an annual campaign aimed at parents and carers around how they can support their child in sport and what they can do to keep them safe. This year's theme is based on some key messages that we've heard from young people over the past couple of years that we've been running the campaign, and is focusing on how parents can play their part in sport and bring out the best in their child. Today, I'm joined by Finn, who is one of the young people who's part of the group. And I'll hand over to you, Finn. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Finn. I'm from Uri, in County Down in Northern Ireland. I'm involved in many sports. I do swimming, Gaelic, which is a sport we play in Ireland, and swimming.
Fab. We always talk about Gaelic, don't we? So something
Yeah,
that people maybe outside of Northern Ireland
yeah,
know. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Gaelic and what it is?
yeah. So it's this sport that's played in all counties of Ireland. There's two main types of Gaelic. It's football and hurling. So hurling, you might see sometimes it's a small ball called a sliotar, and a hurl, which is like a big stick. And then the
Mhm.
other sport is a football, which is same size as a soccer ball, and that's the sport I play, and I really enjoy it. So it's really good fun to play.
Lovely. It's always nice to have some context if you're not kind of aware
Yeah.
of that sport. You definitely fly the flag for Gaelic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about why this campaign, the Keeping Your Child Safe in Sport campaign, matters and is it important to you?
Definitely is important to me because in my sports, I can see some of my peers not feeling safe, and I'm hoping by part of the campaign, I can hopefully help my peers in feeling safe in sport.
I guess based on all of the conversations we've had so far as a group and over the past 6 months, but also the past couple of years, actually, we'll be covering kind of four key areas today. The power of listening, creating a lifelong love of sport and how parents and carers can do that, respect and encouragement and not pressuring children and young people in sport, and finally, around see something, say something, and those kind of key things around safeguarding. Let's jump straight in there then, Finn. Let's start with the power of listening. Why do you think it's important for parents and carers to listen to children about their experiences in sport?
If the result is good or bad, I think it's so important for parents and carers to listen to their children about their experience in sports. It helps us build trust and confidence, which will really help us comfortable voicing our thoughts and letting our emotions out. And we might not always have an outlet to share our experiences of sport.
So true. And that emotional side is really important because it's really difficult, especially kind of after a game or after a performance to find the way out for those emotions. And I know that's something that the group have spoken about a lot in terms of actually just doing that listening. Do you think that's kind of an important thing?
Yeah, I think it can be quite hard for children to voice their experiences. We're not always used to it. We don't know what to say, how to say it. But really, if parents were just to create a non-judgmental space, it'll really help us feel comfortable sharing our thoughts without fear of criticism or embarrassment.
Are there any other kind of top tips you have for parents and carers on creating that environment that helps young people be able to share what they want to?
Yeah, I really think just a non-judgmental space, a space where you can just say, maybe just saying, yeah, I'm here to listen. You can say, you don't have to say, you just say what you want to say. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help. Here, you might not feel comfortable talking to me now, but maybe if you want to talk to me later, or if you, it doesn't have to be me that you can talk to a family member, talk to a sibling, talk to your coach, and it can be at a time where you choose. Don't always feel like you can only talk about your feelings when I ask about them,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always have to be me that you talk to, because I think so often in these situations it can be the same family member that's involved in their sport. So that brings them to training, brings them to the games, takes them home. So it feels natural to talk to them, but maybe the child doesn't feel comfortable in talking to that person. So yeah, I think it's just really important to be any time with anyone.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Anytime with anyone and all those different options. Because something you've talked about a lot as a group is that, every young person is different and every child is different. So there's no, one size fits all of if you just do this thing and do that thing, then it will be the right thing to do because it's about getting to know each other and working what works for each different family, I suppose. And that's something the rest of the group have talked about too. Fab, we're off flying starting with some really great tips there. Um, the next kind of thing that we were going to cover, and is something that's come up a lot in our discussions, is around creating a lifelong love of sport in children and young people. So let's start wide open. How can parents and carers encourage a lifelong love of sport for their child?
I think sometimes we can really feel disconnected with a sport. We might not feel with playing, we just might not feel up to it. But I think something that could really help is that maybe a parent could talk about their past experiences of sport, and they can talk about the positives they had in their sport, all the good things that happened that had happened. But I think it's also really important to talk about the negatives, what didn't go so well, what didn't work,
Mm.
because I think that means the child could relate to the parent and their experiences, and then we would learn that sport isn't always going to be positives, but it's also not going to be negatives, so it will go up and down.
And something some of the rest of the group have talked about is that balance between parents sharing their experiences in a way that's positive, and sometimes maybe young people could feel that parents are oversharing and talking too much about their experiences. And how do parents find that balance between talking about their experiences and not making it about them?
Yes, I think it's a really useful tool for parents to talk about their experiences in sport, but I think the parent could get really into their experience and forget about their child's experience, because the parent is never going to have an identical experience to the child. It's unique. It's got this, it could have the same message, but it could become, the child could have a different idea of it, and they probably are linked. But I think it's just really important to also let the child speak, say, well, this is happening, but this isn't happening. But I
Mm.
think it's still really important for parents and a really useful tool for them to talk about their experiences.
That's really helpful. I'm sure lots of parents and carers listening will relate to what you've just talked about. Another thing that the group have talked about a lot is finding that balance. And actually, I was just speaking to somebody this morning about swimming, that they do swimming, and that's quite an intense sport. And you will know the same. It's
Yeah.
quite intense kind of sport to be part of. How can parents support their child to balance kind of the sport that they're engaged in and maybe their education, exam pressure and dreams for the future that they might have, social engagements that they might be part of, other hobbies they might have. Like, how can parents and carers help balance all of those things?
Yeah, it's definitely something I've experienced. Like, I have a test maybe the next day, but I have training tonight, and I want to go out to play football with my friends, and I want to go swimming. So, and but the parents will like, this test's important, you need to study for it. And I think what could be really helpful is maybe for the child to sit down with the parent and maybe create a schedule. So maybe the parent could say, okay, you should study this night, you've got a test tomorrow. And then maybe we could say, oh, but could we play football this night? So I think it needs to be maybe a bit of a compromise that you can study and for your exams and your academics and all that, but it's also really important to have fun, because I think you're never going to learn much by just sitting at a table looking at a
Mm.
book, and you're not going to learn stuff for your tests by outside all day or playing video games. So it can be really hard to find the balance, but I think if you were to create a schedule, that would certainly help.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And kind of having those conversations and doing that together so you can kind of find out what's most important. And I guess, as you say, you can do the exams and do the sport. And actually, sometimes when you've got that outlet to take away from the exam pressure, that can help a lot. And I guess in reverse as well, sometimes all the pressure can be on the sport and the school can take the back seat. So
Yeah.
having those conversations together about what's important for you and your family, and yeah, that's a super helpful tip. I've never thought about it in that really practical way of just which days and which times and doing that together. Yeah, that's a great tip. Um, the next key thing that we've talked about as a group is around respect and encouragement and balancing pressures that might come from being involved in sport. Um, I guess in terms of that, we've talked a lot about parent and carers' behaviour and how that can create pressure or can create encouragement. And there's kind of a fine line between those two things. What impact do you think that parent and carer behaviour can have on children and young people and how they enjoy sport?
Yeah, parents and carers have huge impact in the sport, in our sport, but it can be both really positive and really negative. They can be shouting encouragement, they can be saying well done, they can be saying good goal, keep going. But it can have a really negative impact on us sometimes if they have a negative attitude. They get disappointed about how you've performed, and it can have a real severe impact on the rest of the match, for example, and also after the match. And I think the parent also might feel a bit of regret about saying it, and I don't think it works out for either one if the parent is shouting negative things. So it definitely does have a severe impact on us.
I've had some similar conversations with young people about, sometimes parents can, or always, I guess, parents are wanting to do the best for their young person and they are trying their best to encourage, but sometimes that comes out as pressure.
Sometimes they just don't know what to say. Maybe they could have experienced from when their parents shouted on the sidelines when they were younger.
On that, then, I guess, do you have any top tips or kind of do's and don'ts for parents and carers about like behavior in sport and language and that kind of thing? Because it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say just a really good rule for thumb is just try to keep all encouragement from the sidelines positive. If you have any tips on how we could improve, you can still relay us. Maybe it might not just be the best place to say it on the sideline. Maybe just wait a short time after and still say it. Because I think when they're not saying it on the sidelines, they're thinking about
Mm.
how to say it and put it maybe put a positive spin on it. So potentially say you did really well today, you did this really well, but maybe try to do, but maybe we could work on this, maybe we could practice tomorrow on this. So I think there are parents' negative points are really useful for the child, and the child, we do appreciate the negative points on about how to improve, how to get better. So it's still really important, but maybe the sidelines is just not the best place to
Mm.
say it.
When we've had similar conversations with the rest of the group, um, we've talked a little bit around every young person is different. And like I guess you and your experience that you've talked about, you've found parent feedback really helpful in improving your game and how you play. And other young people we spoke to have said actually I don't like getting feedback from my parents and carers. I just want them to be my parent. I don't want them to have any kind of input into my coaching and giving me any of those tips. I'll get that from my coach. So I guess one of the things that you've definitely all talked about is getting to know your young person and what they need.
Yeah, definitely. Every child's different. Some might want it straight after the match. Some are like they're still in the zone. They still want to know. But some might just really need to relax after the game, and maybe they just want to get distracted with something else, whether it be watching a movie or eating their dinner or something like
Mm.
that. So ask your child, when do you want to hear about this?
Yeah, that's so true. And I guess another thing that the group have talked about a little bit is that younger age range, when people are just starting to get involved in sport and maybe they're going to, we have diddy kicks near here where they're literally little toddlers and they're getting to play football. And actually, at that stage, I know you've spoken a lot about it just needs to be fun, and it not being those tips and tricks and it just
Yeah, but
there
I
to have
think
fun.
it's meant to be fun at all. Even as you grow older, sport is still meant to be fun. You might think as everyone grows bigger, maybe you're playing on a bigger pitch, maybe it gets more important. It's still meant to be fun. The purpose of the sport's always meant to be fun. So it doesn't really matter what age you are.
Mm.
You should always ask yourself and always ask your child, are you playing for fun or are you playing just for the sake of playing?
Mm. Yeah, that's so true. That's a really good tip. Don't lose sight of that as a parent or carer, making sure that fun element is still there. And actually, that maybe leads into our next section quite nicely around seeing something and saying something. The whole aim of this campaign is about parents and carers playing their part, which you've talked a lot about how they can play their part and some things that they can do, but also keeping their child safe in their sport. Um, are there any kind of things that you think a parent or carer might notice about their child that would suggest something is happening that they maybe need to ask some questions about or learn a little bit more about? And I guess that fun element is one of those key things. If they're not having fun anymore, what's happening there and why? Is there anything else?
But I think if you see that maybe they're not as excited to go to their sport, if they're maybe on their own, they might be thinking to themselves, they might not be as loud as usual. That's some things to look out for. And I think if you notice them things, always ask, are you all right? Is there anything I can do? Um, don't burden them with about 100 questions, because you probably have about 100 questions to ask. But I think just the questions, are you all right? Is there anything I can do? And just enjoy it is the most important question.
Every club will have different arrangements about what to do if you're worried about a child who is at a sport, and you might notice something in someone else's child, I guess, maybe if you're at a game or something that you're worried about. But it's really important for parents and carers to know what their arrangements are and who they should speak to if they're worried about something or someone that's happening in sport. And our NSPCC helpline is always there to help with those kinds of things as well. Parents can always give a quick call and just say, I'm worried about this, I'm not sure what to do, or I don't know if I need to worry about this, because it's not always straightforward, but it's always there to give, as you talked about, non-judgmental kind of advice and conversations, which is great. And for children, Childline as well, that's always there if there's a child who's worried about something that's happening, or they're worried about their own feelings or feelings of a friend as well. So there's loads of support out there, but knowing that support is a really important thing that I know the group talk about a lot as well.
Yep.
Um, we've covered loads there, Finn. We've given loads of top tips around like listening and how to do that lifelong love of sport and what kind of environment creates that lifelong love. We've talked a lot around balancing encouragement and pressure and that fine line. Key messaging again about sport needing to always be fun, and a very brief touch on there around things that parents and carers might notice in their child or someone else's child and what to do if they're worried about that. So do you have any final messages for parents or carers who might be listening today?
Yeah, I think you might all listen to all that, and some might think maybe it's just best I just stay out of their sport. Maybe it's just I just leave it alone, let them crack on themselves. And we really don't want that. We really want you to get involved, and we still want you there on the sidelines. We still want you to take us to training. We still want you to take us home. We're really appreciative of your support. And I think it's just so important to ask your child, are you, what do you want me to do? Are you all right with me being here? And it's probably going to be a yes. And if it's a no, that could just be a one-time thing. Maybe it's just they're feeling bad that day. And I think it's just give them space, but also still stay involved, stay interested, still ask them questions, still encourage them. And yeah, I think just try to encourage your child to keep after sport and keep
Mhm.
enjoying it.
Being there, but being there in the right way is something you've talked about, you specifically have talked about before. And I know that's the key thing to kind of take away. Oh, Finn, that's been great catching up and going through everything. I think you've summarized kind of 6 months worth of conversations there from the whole group in a really succinct way. So well done, and thank you so much for joining us.